A cold silence wrapped the valley long before the first light touched the horizon, but something unusual moved through that silence today. Something that felt older than memory and heavier than the winter air. No one in the village noticed it, not yet. They were still asleep behind locked wooden doors and frost-covered windows. But the old man standing at the edge of the forest felt it clearly, like a quiet hand pressing against his chest, warning him that the peace of this land was about to break. He had lived here for 50 years, long enough to understand the language of the mountains, long enough to read the sky the way others read books, and long enough to sense when something was wrong. And today, before the sun had even risen, he knew that something was coming, something that had not entered this valley for generations. The snow around his boots was untouched except for his own footsteps, but the forest in front of him felt awake, as if its heart had started beating after a long sleep. Thin mist curled around the branches, drifting slowly like breath from a hidden creature. The air smelled sharper than usual, carrying a strange coldness that did not belong to winter. It was the kind of cold that touched the bones, not the skin. He tightened the wool shawl around his shoulders, trying to ignore the feeling rising within him. But feelings like that were never wrong. They were warnings. The valley below lay completely still, rows of houses, silent rooftops dusted with fresh snow, and faint smoke rising from chimneys where fireplaces had burned through the night. To anyone else, the morning looked peaceful. Calm, perfect, but he knew better. Calmness this deep often came before a storm. A familiar sound cracked behind him, the crunch of snow under light footsteps. He didn't turn. He already knew who it was. "You felt it too, didn't you?" the young woman asked softly. Her voice carried a mixture of fear and hope, as if she wished he would say no, but he never lied to her. "It has returned," he said, "after all these years." She stepped beside him, her breath forming tiny clouds in the frozen air. Her eyes stayed fixed on the forest. The trees seemed darker this morning, their shadows longer, their silence heavier. "How much time do we have?" she whispered. "Not enough," he replied. A thin wind rushed between them, brushing through the treetops and carrying with it a faint hum, so soft that almost no one would hear it, but they heard it. They had heard it before, many winters ago, on a night that had changed their lives forever. The young woman shivered not from the cold, but from memory. "Do you think the villagers will believe us this time?" she asked. He shook his head slowly. "People only believe what they can see, and what is coming does not show itself until it is too late." Her hands tightened into fists. He could see the fear hidden behind her determination. She had grown stronger over the years, but the past never truly leaves, not when it is tied to something that should never have existed. A crow landed on a dead branch near them, its wings shaking off snow. It stared at them with still, unblinking eyes as if watching, waiting. Then it released a low call, short, raw, almost broken. The old man closed his eyes for a moment. "The forest is warning us. But why now?" And she asked, "Why after so long?" "Because the seal is weakening," he replied. "And when it breaks, everything we buried will rise again." The young woman inhaled sharply, but she did not step back. Instead, she moved closer to the forest, studying the shadows between the trees. "We can stop it," she said, her voice stronger than before. "We did it once." "Once was luck," he answered. "This time, it will fight harder." A distant rumble trembled through the ground, soft but unmistakable. The snow beneath their feet quivered like a heartbeat. The old man looked at the rising sun. Half of it had appeared above the mountains, spilling pale gold across the valley. The day had begun, but the peace of the valley was already dying. He exhaled slowly. It begins today. The rumble faded as quickly as it came, but its echo stayed in the ground, like a pulse buried under layers of ice. The young woman pressed her boot into the snow, feeling the faint vibration still moving beneath. It was weak now, almost whisper light, but it was enough to confirm her fear. "It's waking up," she said quietly. The old man nodded without taking his eyes off the forest. The mist between the trees had thickened, coiling in slow spirals as if the forest itself was trying to breathe through the frozen air. The shadows seemed to shift, stretching toward them with every passing second. "We should warn them," she said, turning toward the village. "We will," he replied. "But not yet." She stopped. "Not yet. If the seal is weakening, they need to know." "They won't listen," he said gently. "Not until they see proof. And what is coming does not show proof without taking something first." Her chest tightened. She hated the truth in his words. She hated that every warning they had given before had been dismissed as superstition or fear or the past refusing to die. The valley lived in comfort. People trusted the snow, the mountains, the quietness. They did not believe that anything dangerous could exist in a place this beautiful. But beauty often hid the darkest things. She looked back at the forest. A thin shape, maybe smoke, maybe shadow, moved between the trees, gliding silently like it had no weight. She blinked and it vanished. "It's closer than we thought," she whispered. The old man stepped forward until he stood just at the border where the forest began. "It has been waiting, watching. It remembers us the same way we remember it." The young woman swallowed hard. Memories flashed across her mind, broken light, shaking ground, screams echoing through darkness, and the old man pulling her through the snow as something enormous moved behind them. She had been a child then, too young to understand. But fear etched itself deeply, becoming a part of her. "We can face it again," she said, more to herself than to him. "You are braver now," he said, "but bravery must not become blindness." Another sound rose from deep within the forest, a low, distant groan as though a mountain was shifting in its sleep. Birds burst from the treetops, scattering across the brightening sky in chaotic flurries. The old man lowered his voice. "It feels the sun. The seal weakens faster at dawn." "We don't have much time," she said. He turned toward the village. "We need help, even if they don't believe us." She nodded. "Then let's go." But as they started walking, a sharp crack cut through the stillness. A sound like ice breaking on a frozen lake. They froze. The forest behind them seemed to lean closer. The mist trembled. "That was not a tree," she whispered. "No," he said. "Something just broke free." They exchanged a brief, heavy look before moving down the slope, their steps fast but silent. Snow kicked behind them in soft bursts, leaving a winding trail back toward the village. Houses grew clearer with every step. Stone walls, stacked firewood, smoke rising from chimneys, life waking slowly with the morning. Nothing looked wrong. Nothing hinted at approaching danger. People would open their doors soon. Children would run outside with laughter. Farmers would lead their animals into the fields. Women would sweep the front steps and greet neighbors. and they would have no idea what was creeping toward them beneath the cover of trees. When they reached the first wooden fence, the young woman slowed. "Who do we tell first?" "We tell the ones who will listen," he said. "Even if they are few." She glanced at him. "Do you think the chief will believe us?" "He believes only what fits his peace," the old man replied. "But peace is easy to believe when you have never seen the monster beneath it." She let out a sharp breath. "Then we go to Mara." His eyes softened. "Yes, she will understand." A sudden, icy gust swept through the village, rattling windows and carrying with it a faint, hollow sound. It drifted between houses like a voice searching for someone to answer. The young woman turned slowly toward the forest again. The mist had reached the edge of the trees, and this time it did not retreat. The old man's voice dropped to a whisper. "It has found the passage." She felt her heartbeat quicken. "Then this is no longer just a warning." "No," he said, stepping closer to her. "This is the beginning." The village was waking slowly, unaware that something cold and ancient was already crawling toward its edge. A few windows creaked open as early risers leaned out to test the morning air. A wooden door groaned somewhere behind them, and a dog barked lazily from a distant yard. Everything looked normal. Everything sounded normal. But the old man and the young woman knew that normal was only a thin surface now, one that could break at any moment. They moved through the narrow path between houses, their boots crunching softly against the snow. A few villagers nodded as they passed, offering casual smiles. None of them noticed the faint tremor that still whispered through the ground. None of them felt the strange heaviness in the air. Most people never felt danger until it stood right in front of them. The young woman's eyes moved constantly, studying every shadow, every rooftop, every quiet corner. She was searching for signs, any signs that the forest's darkness had reached this far, but everything seemed untouched for the moment. They turned a corner and stopped in front of a small wooden house with a faded red door. Smoke curled from its chimney, rising in thin ribbons that dissolved into the pale sky. "Mara will be awake," the young woman said. The old man nodded. "She sleeps lightly." She raised her hand to knock, but before she could, the door swung open with a suddenness that made both of them step back. Myra stood in the doorway, her dark hair tied back, her eyes sharp and already filled with concern. "I felt it," she said before either of them could speak. "It shook my walls." The young woman exhaled in relief. "Then you know." Myra stepped aside to let them in. "Tell me how much time we have." The old man closed the door behind them. "Less than we expected." Myra moved to the small table in the center of the room. 3 wooden chairs surrounded it, though only one looked regularly used. She gestured for them to sit, but none of them did. The atmosphere was too tense for sitting. "It broke something," the young woman said. "We heard it deep inside the forest." Myra's expression tightened. "The seal?" "Yes," the old man replied. "A fracture, at least, may be worse." Myra paced slowly across the wooden floor, her steps soft but restless. "I knew it would not last forever," she murmured. "But I hoped we would have more years before it stirred again." The young woman watched her carefully. "You think it will come for the village first?" "No," Myra said firmly. "It never comes for places, it comes for people." The old man met her gaze. "It remembers us." Myra stopped walking. Her breath stilled for a moment. "Then it is already looking." A quiet knock at the door made all three of them turn. The old man lifted a hand, signaling them to stay silent. The knock came again, soft, almost timid. The young woman moved closer to him. Who would visit this early? Myra glanced toward the window, peering through the frosted glass. It's Lena, she said in a low voice. The baker's daughter. The old man opened the door slowly. A small girl, no older than 7, stood shivering on the doorstep. Her cheeks were red from the cold, and her eyes were wide with the kind of fear children struggled to explain. Lena, Myra said, kneeling down. What happened? The girl swallowed hard. My papa, he said to fetch you. Something happened in the barn. What happened? The old man asked gently. Lena shook her head. I don't know. I woke up and heard him shouting. The animals were scared. They wouldn't stop kicking. Myra grabbed her coat from a hook on the wall. Take us, she said calmly. They followed the little girl through the narrow lanes. Snowflakes drifted lightly from the sky, covering the rooftops in a thin shimmer. A rooster crowed somewhere behind them, but even its morning call sounded uneasy. When they reached the baker's house, they found the man standing outside the barn, his face pale, his hands shaking despite the thick gloves. He didn't look surprised to see them. He looked relieved. Thank the spirits you came, he said in a trembling voice. There's something in there, something wrong. The old man approached slowly. What did you see? The baker pointed toward the barn door. Not see, here. A deep, trembling thud echoed from inside the barn, slow, rhythmic, unnatural. The old man felt the vibration travel up his feet. The young woman's breath caught. Myra whispered, "It has already crossed the boundary." The barn door rattled once, just once, like something inside had tested it. Not a creature, not an animal, something older, something awakened. The old man stepped forward. It has begun. The old man's hand rested briefly on the barn door, feeling its slight tremor through the wood. The sound inside was no ordinary thud. It was deliberate, measured, and impossible to ignore. Every beat carried weight, as if the forest itself were pressing against the village, reminding them of the power it once held long ago. The young woman pressed closer to him, her eyes wide, alert to the smallest movement. Myra's gaze never left the door. She could sense it before it came into view, like a shadow moving at the edge of the mind. We can't open it, the old man whispered. Not yet. It will know if we try to force it. The baker's hands shook around the handle of his coat. But I have to protect them, he said, glancing at the stables where the animals were restless. I have to. Wait, Myra interrupted. Her voice was firm yet calm. Acting out of fear is exactly what it wants. We don't give it that. We move carefully together. The old man nodded. Exactly. We observe, we listen, and we act when the moment is right. A long, slow thud echoed again, and now the vibrations ran up through the ground to their knees. It was larger, heavier, and it carried a rhythm almost like a heartbeat, ancient, unyielding, and sure. The young woman could feel it in her chest. Lena clung to Myra's sleeve, her small hands trembling, eyes wide with terror and curiosity at the same time. What is it? The girl whispered. The old man exhaled slowly. It is the part of the world that does not belong to us. The part that remembers what we forget. It is a force older than the snow, older than the stones beneath our feet. The young woman swallowed. She had always known the forest held secrets, but she had never imagined something so close, so deliberate. The trees swayed slightly even though there was no wind, as though they were leaning toward the barn, listening, waiting. Shadows moved in the misty edges, shifting faster than the eye could follow. Myra's voice cut through the tension. We need to calm the animals first. They sense what we cannot yet see, and their fear will spread. The baker nodded, though his eyes never left the barn. He began moving toward the stables, but his steps were careful, deliberate. The young woman followed him, the old man at her side, and Mara kept her attention fixed on the barn itself, her senses stretched, alert, feeling the forest's heartbeat through the frozen earth. The animals were indeed restless. Horses stamped their hooves, tails flicking in agitation. Cows lowed nervously, and even the chickens clucked in alarm. It was as if the air itself carried a message they all understood. The young woman reached out to a horse's neck, stroking the thick fur, murmuring softly. Her voice was gentle, slow, and careful. She could feel the tension easing, if only slightly. The old man moved among the animals as well, placing his hand on a cow, then a horse, murmuring words the girl did not understand, but that seemed to hold a quiet power. Slowly, the low growl of fear diminished into a nervous but steady calm. Then the barn thudded again, louder this time, and the floor beneath them seemed to pulse. Even through their boots, they felt it. Lena squeaked and hid behind Mara. Mara's hand rested lightly on her shoulder, steady and reassuring. The young woman looked at the old man, who gave a small, almost imperceptible nod. "It is testing us," he said. "Not attacking yet, only gauging." Mara whispered. "It wants to see if we are afraid, if we panic, if we break." The young woman closed her eyes for a moment, breathing slowly, letting herself feel the rhythm of the thuds, letting the vibrations run through her body without flinching. Lena peeked from behind Mara, and even she began to breathe more evenly. The forest itself seemed to lean closer, shadows stretching as if trying to see into their hearts. The old man spoke quietly, almost to himself, but enough for them all to hear. "We face it not with strength, but with understanding. It is patient. We must be patient too." Another deep thud, slow and deliberate, shook the barn once more. The young woman felt it deep in her chest. It was steady, relentless, and somehow alive. Myra's eyes glimmered with determination. "Soon," she whispered. "Soon we will know how to act." The wind stirred outside, carrying a faint scent of cold earth and ancient wood. Even the snow seemed to pause, as if holding its breath. Everything waited for the next movement. Everything waited for the moment when the forest would reveal the first piece of what had awakened after centuries of sleep. The old man looked at the young woman, and she met his gaze. Neither spoke. No words were needed. They knew what was coming. They felt it in their bones. The air itself had changed, becoming heavier, older, wiser. And in that moment, the forest seemed to whisper a single, chilling truth. The time for watching was over. The moment to act would come before the sun rose fully. The barn's shadow stretched across the snow, dark and alive, almost breathing. The forest waited behind it, patient and endless. And inside the barn, the heartbeat continued, louder now, almost as if it were calling out to them, inviting them closer into the unknown. The old man exhaled and whispered, "Prepare yourselves. It begins soon, and we cannot falter." The young woman drew a slow, steady breath, letting the cold morning air fill her lungs. The barn loomed before them, larger and darker than it had ever seemed. The sound inside had changed, no longer a simple pulse, but a low, resonant vibration that rolled through the earth, threading into their bones. Every step closer made it feel heavier, more deliberate, like the forest itself was urging them forward. "Are you ready?" the old man asked, his voice quiet but firm. She nodded, though her chest tightened. Mara's gaze never wavered, fixed on the barn as if she could see what hid inside. Lena clutched Mara's hand, small fingers trembling, yet somehow finding courage in her protector's calm presence. The old man moved ahead slightly, placing a hand on the barn's wooden frame. His fingers traced the grooves of the weathered planks, as if listening to the wood itself. "It remembers the seal," he murmured. "It knows what held it back before." The vibration shifted beneath them, now pulsing irregularly, like a slow heartbeat skipping moments. The young woman felt a wave of unease, but she forced herself to stay still, to let the rhythm move through her instead of pushing back. Mara whispered softly, more to herself than anyone else, "We can guide it. If we remain calm, if we act together, we can contain it again." A sudden gust of wind whipped through the narrow streets of the village, rattling shutters and stirring the light snow. It carried a faint scent of earth and wood, but beneath that, something older, a metallic, sharp tang that made their teeth clench. The old man's eyes narrowed. "It senses us. It is aware we are here." The young woman stepped closer, letting her hand brush against the barn door. The vibration transferred to her palm, traveling up her arm into her chest. It was alive, aware, intelligent, patient. Lena let out a small whimper, but Mara held her close. "We must be steady," Mara whispered. "Fear will only make it stronger." They waited, silent except for the subtle hum beneath their feet. Then came a change, a deep, resonant groan rising from inside the barn. The old man inhaled sharply. "It tests the boundaries now. It wants to see if the village is ready if we are ready." The young woman felt a strange pull, as if the air itself was tugging at her, urging her to step closer, to feel the presence fully. She swallowed hard, focusing on her breathing, steadying her heart. The vibrations grew stronger, and the faint outlines of shadow began to shift inside the barn. Not clearly visible, not yet, but alive, moving, a force that seemed to breathe, to watch, to wait. Myra spoke again, calm and commanding. "We cannot confront it with anger or force. We must meet it with patience and understanding. Let it know we do not seek to harm, only to guide." The old man nodded, placing both hands on the barn door. "We did it once before. We can do it again. But we must act in unison." The wind picked up, carrying whispers through the streets of the sleeping village. The faint tremor beneath their feet shifted into something more urgent, more insistent. Lena's grip on Mara's hand tightened, but the girl's fear was tempered by awe. Even she could sense the enormity of what waited within those wooden walls. The vibration now pulsed rhythmically, almost like a slow chant, as if the barn itself had become a drum for something vast and ancient. The old man closed his eyes briefly. "It communicates in ways we cannot fully understand, but we feel it. That is enough for now." The young woman opened her eyes and looked at Mara, who gave a slight nod. Then to Lena, who tried to mimic the calm resolve of her guardian. Together, the four of them formed a fragile circle of awareness and steadiness, standing at the threshold of the barn. The old man whispered once more, voice low but steady, Prepare yourselves. Whatever is inside, it does not wish to destroy. It wishes only to remember. And if we are not careful, if we falter, it will take more than the village, it will take us. A deep, rolling thud shook the barn again, louder than before, vibrating through the wooden frame and into their hearts. The air was thick now, heavy with anticipation. The forest beyond the village seemed to lean closer, silent and watchful, as though the mountains themselves were holding their breath. The young woman felt her knees weaken slightly but straightened, inhaling the cold air fully. Myra's hand rested gently on Lena's shoulder. The old man's eyes were closed, listening. And then, for a brief, almost imperceptible moment, the barn fell completely silent. A calmness unlike anything they had known settled over them, and in that pause, every shadow, every tremor, every heartbeat of the forest waited. The old man opened his eyes and whispered, "It begins now." The silence stretched, heavy and almost unbearable. The young woman's pulse raced in her ears, each beat echoing the faint rhythm still lingering beneath the ground. Myra's eyes remained locked on the barn, sharp and unyielding, as if she could pierce the darkness that lay within. Lena clung tightly to her side, small and trembling, yet she did not cry. The fear in her gaze was balanced by a fragile trust, the kind that comes only when someone knows they are guided by strength they do not yet fully understand. A sudden, low rumble rolled from inside the barn, slow but deliberate, like the earth itself had shifted beneath their feet. The young woman felt it in her chest, a vibration that made her teeth clench involuntarily. She swallowed hard, forcing herself to remain still, to listen. The old man took a slow step forward, his hand brushing the barn door again. "It is stirring," he whispered, his voice calm yet edged with urgency. "The moment we feared has arrived." The shadows inside the barn shifted, faint at first, like smoke curling against the wooden walls. Then a form began to emerge, tall, vast, and indistinct, a shape that seemed alive yet not entirely corporeal. It moved with a slow, deliberate grace, flowing as though the air around it was thickened, resistant. The young woman could feel its presence even without seeing it fully, a weight pressing lightly against her senses, reminding her of all that had been forgotten in the quiet of the valley. Myra inhaled deeply, steadying herself and the girl at her side. "Remember," she whispered, "it is not here to harm us. It is here to remember, to reclaim what was once its own." The young woman nodded, feeling her fingers tremble slightly but refusing to move them from the barn door. The old man stepped closer, his eyes half closed, sensing, listening. "We must guide it," he said softly. "If we do not, it will take more than the village, it will take what we hold in our hearts." A deep, resonant thud vibrated through the ground once more, slow and measured. The barn itself seemed to respond, wooden planks groaning, nails straining, yet remaining steadfast. Lena pressed her face against Myra's side, watching silently, her small body tense. The young woman felt a strange pull at the base of her spine, a sensation that was neither fear nor dread, but an ancient recognition. She had felt this once before, long ago, as a child, and had only now begun to understand it. The forest did not act randomly. It moved with purpose, and this purpose was older than any memory in the village. The shadows deepened, thickening into a shape that seemed to inhale the room itself. The old man whispered again, Do not resist it. Feel it. Guide it. Be steady. His hand rested firmly on the door now, pressing into the vibrations that rolled beneath their feet. Let it see we are ready. Let it see we do not fear. A sudden gust of wind swept through the alleyways of the village, rattling shutters and lifting light snow into spirals. The young woman's hair whipped around her face, but she did not flinch. The barn thudded again, louder this time, as though it were announcing its presence. The shape inside pulsed, expanding and contracting in rhythm with the ground, a living shadow that exhaled the history of centuries. Myra took Lena's hand and whispered words the girl could not fully understand, but that seemed to calm her, steady her breathing. The young woman mirrored the gesture, placing her hands lightly on the door, grounding herself. The old man's voice grew firmer. Now we act together. The forest outside seemed to shift as well, shadows stretching along the snow, bending toward the barn. The air thickened, almost tangible, heavy with anticipation. And then, in one slow, deliberate motion, the shape began to move outward, toward the door, its presence pressing on them all. It was immense, not fully seen, yet profoundly aware, its every motion measured, intelligent. The young woman braced herself, feeling the rhythm of its heartbeat match her own, a strange, steady cadence that seemed to speak directly to her chest. Myra whispered again, "Guide it. Let it feel the steadiness of our hearts. Let it remember the boundaries. Let it know we will not falter." The old man placed both hands against the wood now, murmuring words lost to time, a chant that vibrated alongside the shape's slow movements. The young woman closed her eyes, inhaling deeply, feeling the pull of the shadow, the hum beneath their feet, the awareness that they were standing at the threshold between safety and chaos. A final, resonant thud shook the barn, loud and commanding. The young woman opened her eyes slowly. The shadow paused, sensing, weighing. Then, in that instant, the old man whispered, "We hold it, we guide it, we endure." The young woman felt a calm settle over her, subtle but real, as if a tide had shifted. The shadow inside the barn seemed to hesitate, drawn back slightly, acknowledging the steadiness of those who faced it. The forest around them remained silent, watchful, waiting. And in that silence, the young woman realized something profound. The battle was only beginning, yet the first step had been taken. The barn thudded once more, slower now, measured, patient. Myra's hand squeezed Lena's. The old man exhaled, a quiet relief in his chest. And the young woman, standing with them at the threshold, felt the weight of history and fear and courage intertwine into something enduring, something that would guide them through the dawn to come. The shadow lingered inside the barn, vast and still, as if waiting for permission to move further. The old man stepped back slightly, letting the young woman and Mara feel the full weight of its presence. Lena's small fingers remained tightly entwined with Mara's, but the girl's eyes were wide, fixed, absorbing every detail of the moment. Fear had not disappeared, but it was tempered by awe. Even the animals outside seemed to sense the change, their nervous movements slowing, heads tilting as if they were listening to a rhythm only they could understand. Myra turned to the young woman and whispered, "It tests our hearts, not just our courage. You must hold steady. Remember, it will respond to the fear you carry, but also to the calm you bring." The young woman nodded, feeling a wave of warmth pass through her chest. a small anchor against the shadow's weight. She closed her eyes briefly, inhaling deeply, letting the cold air fill her lungs, steadying her pulse, preparing herself to endure what was coming. The barn shuddered once more, a low, resonant vibration that moved through the wooden planks and into the frozen ground beneath them. The old man's voice was quiet, chanting softly, a rhythm that seemed to echo the heartbeat of the shadow inside. "It remembers," he murmured. "It remembers everything that was lost, every bond, every fear, and it will not forget what we hold in our hearts." The young woman placed her hand on the barn again, feeling the vibration travel up her arm, threading into her chest. It was alive, aware, intelligent, ancient. Myra's gaze never wavered, steady and unflinching, as if she could hold the shadow at bay with sheer focus. Lena pressed her forehead against Myra's side, trembling but quiet now, a small comfort to the young woman who felt her own unease mirrored in the child. Another thud, deeper this time, rolled through the barn and into the village street. The snow around them shifted slightly, lifted by a wind that was warmer than the morning air, carrying scents of earth, wood, and something older, something that had existed before the village, before the forest itself had taken form. The old man inhaled slowly. "It has crossed the first threshold," he said. "It knows we are here, and it weighs our intent." The young woman swallowed hard. The shadow moved, not forward but outward, expanding slightly like a fog that pressed against their senses without fully revealing itself. She could feel the pull at the base of her spine, a sensation that was neither fear nor threat, but a reminder of its presence, of its awareness. Myra whispered again, "It does not wish to harm, only to measure, to see if we can guide it if we are strong enough." The old man nodded, closing his eyes for a brief moment. "We are strong, but we must act as one. If one falters, it will sense the imbalance. It will test again, harder." His hands pressed lightly on the barn's wood, a grounding motion, sending vibrations back in response to the shadow's rhythm. The young woman mirrored him, pressing her palm against the door, letting the weight of her own calm feed into the pulse that trembled beneath them all. The shadow shifted again, this time slower, deliberate, almost thoughtful. Its edges wavered like smoke, and though it remained largely indistinct, it carried an undeniable awareness. Myra took a deep breath. "It will not leave until it understands our hearts," she whispered. "We guide it by remaining still, by showing it that fear does not rule us." Another vibration rolled through the barn, loud enough to rattle loose snow from the rooftops, and the young woman felt a shiver of recognition pass through her. She had felt something like this before as a child, when the forest seemed alive with eyes watching, senses aware. And though she had run from it then, she now understood it differently. This force was patient, deliberate, and bound by rules older than the village, older than time itself. The barn's shadow moved slightly again, pressing against the thin threshold of the door, and the old man whispered, "It knows our courage now. It knows our calm. But it will not stop until it sees every part of us that trembles." The young woman's chest rose and fell steadily. Lena's small hand squeezed Mara's, steadying both herself and those around her. And as the shadow's presence continued to fill the barn, pressing against the cold wooden walls and into their hearts, the young woman realized that the first true challenge of the day was not in confronting the shadow itself. It was in enduring its awareness, feeling its power, and remaining steady as it tested everything they held inside. A long, deliberate pause followed. The shadow did not move further, but neither did it retreat. It hung there, heavy, intelligent, aware. The forest beyond the village seemed to hold its breath. And in that silence, the young woman understood. The forest, the shadow, the earth beneath them, they were all waiting for something. Waiting for a choice, a moment of certainty, a demonstration of hearts unbroken and minds steady. Mara exhaled slowly. "The next step is coming," she whispered. "We must be ready." The silence stretched, thick and almost tangible, pressing against their senses like the weight of winter snow. The shadow inside the barn remained still, vast and almost formless, yet its presence was undeniable. It pulsed faintly, a rhythm that rolled beneath their feet, threading into the earth, vibrating through the frozen ground. Every tremor carried meaning, and the young woman felt it deeply, a connection she could not explain, but one she instinctively understood. Mara's eyes were fixed on the barn, unblinking, unwavering. She whispered softly to Lena, "It is watching, waiting. It wants to see what we carry inside us." The girl's small hand tightened around Mara's, her tiny fingers seeking reassurance. Courage she did not yet possess fully, yet was learning to draw from the strength of those around her. The young woman felt a pull at her chest, a gentle pressure, as though the forest itself were reminding her of every fear, every doubt, every hesitation that she had carried. The old man's hands rested firmly on the barn's wooden frame. His eyes were half closed, listening, feeling, attuning himself to the rhythm that pulsed through the walls, the snow, the ground beneath. "It tests more than courage," he whispered. "It tests understanding. It tests patience. It measures the weight of our hearts." A low, resonant thud rolled through the barn once more, slow and deliberate, vibrating up through the earth and into the young woman's knees. The shadow shifted slightly, its edges flickering like smoke caught in a gentle wind. Though it remained largely formless, she could sense intelligence behind the movement, a deliberate observation, a weighing of presence. Myra took a slow, steady breath. "Do not react," she whispered, her voice calm but firm. "It will respond to our fear if we show it. Let us be steady. Let us be patient. Let us be present." The young woman pressed her palm once again to the barn door, feeling the vibration travel through her arm, into her chest, threading into the rhythm of her heartbeat. Lena pressed closer, small and trembling, yet anchored by the calm emanating from Myra. The old man murmured softly, a chant almost too quiet to hear, weaving a subtle rhythm alongside the pulse of the shadow. Another deep thud echoed from within, louder this time, filling the space around them. The snow on the rooftops shivered, drifting slightly as though alive. The air carried the scent of cold earth, wood, and something older, sharper, metallic, something that reminded them all of the forest's ancient memory. The young woman felt her chest tighten, but she forced her breathing steady, letting the rhythm ground her, connecting her to Mara, to the old man, to Lena, to the village itself. The shadow shifted again, slow and deliberate, moving toward the threshold without crossing it. Its presence pressed against their senses, heavy and intelligent, yet not violent. The old man whispered, "It does not seek to harm, only to remember, only to test, only to see if we understand what it carries." The young woman's eyes scanned the barn's dark interior, the shifting shapes of shadow and light. The forest beyond remained silent, still, as if holding its breath. Mara's whisper followed. "We must be ready for what comes next. Do not falter. Do not flinch. Steadiness is our strength." The shadow pulsed again, slower now, deliberate, almost contemplative. It seemed to sense their calm, their willingness to endure, their refusal to be swept away by fear. The vibration beneath their feet softened slightly, as if acknowledging their presence, their resolve. The young woman felt a strange warmth in her chest, a tether of courage forming, binding her to those beside her, to the barn, to the forest that watched patiently. The old man's hands pressed more firmly against the wood. "It is listening," he whispered, "and it will act soon. When it moves, we must be ready. Our steadiness must guide it." A sudden shift in the shadow caught them all by surprise. Its edges curled outward slightly, testing, probing, sensing the space around the barn. The vibration beneath them increased briefly, then slowed, measured, patient. Mara's hand rested on Lena's shoulder, steadying both her and the girl beside her. The young woman mirrored the gesture, placing her other hand gently on the barn, letting her presence blend with the rhythm of the shadow, letting her calm anchor the unknown force. The forest outside seemed to lean closer, trees swaying slightly though there was no wind. The snow whispered against itself, drifting down in soft spirals. The shadow remained at the threshold, waiting, aware, intelligent. It was neither threatening nor fully revealing itself, yet its presence pressed against the fabric of reality, demanding recognition, testing boundaries, and calling for patience. The old man exhaled slowly, opening his eyes. "The first true challenge is near," he murmured. "The shadow is patient, but it will move soon. When it does, we hold steady. We act with courage, but with understanding. Only that will guide it." Mara squeezed Lena's hand gently. "Be ready," she whispered. "Do not fear. Do not rush. Let it teach us what it must." The young woman felt the weight of anticipation settle over them all. Every thud, every vibration, every whisper of shadow pressed against their hearts. And yet, a strange calm threaded through her chest, a quiet promise that they would endure, that they could guide what was ancient and intelligent with patience, steadiness, and understanding. A long, slow thud echoed once more, deliberate, resounding, and in that moment, the young woman knew the next movement of the shadow would define what came next. The barn's shadow stirred with a subtle force, a slow, deliberate movement that seemed to echo through the earth itself. The young woman felt it in her chest, in her bones, in the soles of her feet. Every thrum of its presence carried meaning, weight, and purpose. Mara's eyes remained fixed on the barn, steady and unwavering, guiding Lena's small hands, her own calm radiating like a shield against the unseen pressure. The old man shifted slightly, murmuring under his breath. "It senses our steadiness. It feels our courage, but it tests patience as well. Do not rush. Do not flinch. Let it move on its own terms." The young woman nodded, her fingers pressed lightly against the barn's weathered wood. The vibration pulsed through her arm, through her chest, threading into the rhythm of her heartbeat. Each pulse demanded focus, a quiet awareness, a readiness that came not from speed or force, but from enduring presence. A deep, low thrum rolled through the barn again, more resonant than before, vibrating through the ground and the frozen air. The shadow expanded slightly, its edges curling like smoke caught in a gentle wind. It was no longer just a presence. It was aware, intelligent, deliberate, observing them, measuring their hearts and intentions. The young woman felt the pull of it, a gentle tug at her awareness, challenging her to remain calm, to hold steady. Myra whispered softly to Lena, "It wants to know if we understand, if we can endure, if we are ready." Lena's small body pressed closer, leaning into her mentor's warmth, drawing courage from her calm. The young woman mirrored them both, letting her breath slow, steady, deep. Inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale. Each breath threaded with the rhythm of the shadow, a silent communion with something vast, ancient, and intelligent. The old man's chant grew slightly louder, a soft hum that blended with the vibration beneath their feet. "It remembers," he whispered. "It remembers what has been lost, what has been forgotten. It waits for us to understand, to guide it, not to force it." The young woman felt a pull again, sharper this time, as though the shadow reached toward them not with malice but with curiosity. She did not flinch. She remained steady, grounding herself in the moment, in the presence of Mara, Lena, and the old man. The air seemed thicker now, dense with the shadow's energy, and yet within that weight there was a strange sense of expectation rather than threat. The barn groaned as if alive, its wooden frame creaking in response to the shifting presence. Snowflakes outside danced lightly in the windless air, catching faint morning light, yet the forest beyond the village remained silent, still, watching. Myra's voice was calm and firm. "We do not push, we do not fight, we guide. Let it feel our steadiness. Let it see our hearts are ready." The shadow pulsed again, a slow expansion outward, brushing against the threshold of the barn without crossing it. Its presence pressed against their senses, intelligent and deliberate, yet contained. The young woman felt the vibration travel into her chest, threading into her awareness, drawing her into a quiet focus she had never experienced before. Every instinct to flee or resist had been replaced by a strange calm, a deep connection to something ancient, patient, and aware. The old man's voice grew softer. "It will move soon. When it does, we must remain calm. Let it understand we do not fear. Let it see our patience. Let it feel our strength in stillness." Myra squeezed Lena's hand gently, reinforcing her calm, her presence radiating steadiness like a light in the shadowed barn. The young woman closed her eyes briefly, inhaling deeply, feeling the pulse of the shadow through her body, letting her breath and heart align with the rhythm. A soft warmth spread across her chest, a tether to those beside her, to the barn, to the forest, to the unseen force that lingered beyond comprehension. The shadow moved again, deliberate, intelligent, extending slightly toward the threshold, testing the limits, feeling for cracks in their composure. Mara whispered, "We endure, we guide, we remain." The old man's chant carried the weight of centuries, subtle but persistent, weaving a rhythm that intertwined with the vibration of the shadow, a silent negotiation of presence, awareness, and understanding. The young woman opened her eyes slowly. The shadow paused, edges flickering, intelligent and patient, waiting for the choice that would determine the next movement. The forest remained quiet, the snow still, the village holding its breath. And in that moment, the young woman realized the truth. This was not a confrontation of force, but of heart, patience, and presence. A long, deliberate thrum echoed once more, vibrating through the barn, through the ground, through their very hearts. The shadow shifted slightly, pausing at the threshold, sensing their readiness. Myra's voice was soft, calm, firm. The next step comes. Stand steady. Breathe, we are ready. The shadow paused at the threshold, its vast, formless shape stretching and curling like smoke caught in an unseen current. The young woman felt the pull of its presence, a gentle yet insistent tug that threaded through her chest, her arms, her legs. Every pulse of its awareness seemed to echo in the frozen ground beneath them, vibrating up through the soles of their feet, resonating in their bones. Myra stood beside her, unmoving, a pillar of calm, her eyes fixed on the shifting darkness. Lena clung tightly to her, small and trembling, yet strangely composed under Myra's steadying presence. The old man's chant had grown softer, almost a whisper, threading its way into the rhythm of the shadow's pulse. "It waits," he said quietly. "It waits for us to meet it, not with fear, but with understanding. It will move when it sees we are ready." The young woman nodded slowly, pressing her hand against the barn's wooden wall. The vibration traveled up her arm and into her chest, mingling with her heartbeat, teaching her a patience she did not know she possessed. A sudden, low rumble rolled through the barn, shaking the wooden planks slightly and sending a shiver up the young woman's spine. The shadow responded instantly, pulsing and shifting, as though it were aware of her own heartbeat and breath. Myra whispered, "Stay steady. Do not move too fast. Let it test the calm in your heart." Lena pressed closer, resting her forehead against Myra's side, drawing courage from the older woman's composure. The shadow stretched outward slightly, testing the limits of the threshold, its presence pressing against their senses without fully revealing itself. The young woman felt a strange warmth spread through her chest, a tether binding her to Myra, Lena, and the old man. Each of them was part of the rhythm, a quiet harmony against the weight of the shadow's intelligence. She understood now that this force was not an enemy, nor a threat. It was a test, a measure of presence, patience, and steadiness. Another deep thrum rolled through the barn, vibrating through the frozen ground and the walls. Snowflakes outside lifted briefly, twirling in the still air, catching the pale morning light. The forest remained silent, watchful, as if holding its breath. Myra's voice cut softly through the quiet. "It will move soon. We must not falter. Our calm is our strength. Our presence is our guide." The shadow responded, a slow, deliberate expansion, moving closer to the threshold. The young woman felt the pull stronger now, threading through her spine, reaching deep into her awareness. She closed her eyes briefly, inhaling slowly, exhaling fully, letting each breath synchronize with the subtle rhythm of the shadow. Every vibration beneath her feet, every pulse against her chest, every shiver along her arms was a reminder of the patience required. The old man's chant carried a gentle authority, steadying the moment, weaving their presence into the rhythm of the shadow. It is patient. It does not act hastily. We must match that patience, meet it in stillness and awareness. The young woman's fingers pressed lightly against the barn, her palms sensing every tremor, threading every pulse into a calm that radiated outward, anchoring the presence in the moment. Myra's hand rested gently on Lena's shoulder. "It will test you. It will measure every thought, every fear, every hesitation. But we do not move in haste. We remain. We endure. we guide. The young woman mirrored them both, pressing her palm firmly against the barn's weathered wood, allowing the vibration of the shadow to thread through her body to steady her, to make her aware that courage was not in action alone, but in presence, in enduring, in patience. The shadow pulsed again, slow and deliberate, a motion that pressed against their awareness, demanding recognition and steady hearts. It seemed to sense their calm, their willingness to endure, and yet its movement was measured, deliberate, waiting for the final demonstration of their readiness. Mara whispered one last time, "Stand steady. Let it feel your presence. Let it see your calm. The next step is coming. Be ready." The young woman inhaled deeply, her chest rising with determination, her heartbeat steady, her awareness attuned to the subtle shifts in the shadow's form. She realized that the moment they had been preparing for was here, not a battle of force, but a trial of endurance, patience, and the strength found in stillness. The shadow moved, slow and purposeful, crossing the threshold by the tiniest fraction, a deliberate test of boundaries, of courage, of awareness. And in that precise movement, the young woman felt the first true weight of what it meant to guide something ancient, intelligent, and patient. The power lay not in the shadow, but in their hearts that met it without fear. The shadow lingered at the threshold, stretching and curling, its vast shape pulsating like a living rhythm. The young woman could feel every tremor in her chest, as though the barn itself was breathing with the shadow. Each pulse carried meaning, subtle yet heavy, threading through the floor, through the walls, through her very bones. Mara's calm presence beside her was a quiet anchor, and Lena's small hands gripped Mara's firmly, drawing courage from the steadiness around her. The old man's soft chant continued, threading a rhythm alongside the shadow's movement. "It knows we are ready," he whispered, "but it tests our patience. It measures our stillness. Let it see that we do not falter." The young woman felt a warmth spread through her chest as she pressed her hand against the barn wall. The vibration traveled through her arm, mingling with her heartbeat, teaching her patience and quiet awareness she had never known before. Another deep pulse rolled through the barn, slow and deliberate, vibrating through the ground and the wooden beams above. The shadow responded instantly, expanding slightly, curling outward without revealing its full form. The young woman inhaled deeply, feeling the vibration align with her own rhythm, her heartbeat syncing with the pulse of something ancient and intelligent. She realized that fear had no place here. Only focus, only calm, only presence mattered. Mara's voice cut softly through the silence. "It will respond to us if we remain steady. Do not flinch. Do not move too quickly. Let it sense our calm." Lena pressed closer to Mara, her small forehead resting against her side, drawing courage from the older woman's quiet strength. The young woman mirrored them both, pressing her palm firmly against the barn's wooden frame, letting her presence become part of the rhythm, part of the silent conversation with the shadow. The shadow shifted again, slow and deliberate, pressing against the threshold, feeling the space without stepping fully forward. It was intelligent, aware, patient. The old man murmured, "It will move when it understands. We do not force. We guide it with our hearts, with patience, with stillness." The young woman felt the vibration travel up her spine, threading through her chest, connecting her to Mara, to Lena, to the barn, to the forest that waited silently outside. A soft warmth spread through her chest as she inhaled deeply. The shadow pulsed once more, deliberate, testing, pressing slightly closer. Mara whispered, "It measures every part of us, every fear, every hesitation. But we do not falter. We remain present. We endure." The young woman held her breath for a moment, feeling the pull of the shadow, the weight of its awareness pressing against her. And yet, within that weight, there was understanding, not threat. The barn groaned softly as if alive, responding to the subtle shifts of the shadow. Snowflakes outside lifted slightly, twirling in the quiet morning air, catching the pale light. The forest beyond remained still, patient, as though it too was waiting for the moment when hearts would meet the shadow in stillness. Mara's voice was calm, steady. "Do not push, do not fight. Let it sense our calm. Let it see that we are ready to endure." The shadow's edges flickered, curling and stretching like smoke caught in an unseen wind. The young woman pressed her hand more firmly against the wood, feeling the vibration travel into her chest and through her entire body. Her heartbeat slowed, aligning with the pulse of the shadow. She felt a strange sense of connection, a tether linking her to the barn, the old man, Mara, Lena, and the forest beyond. The old man whispered, "It will act soon. We must remain calm, steady, and aware. Only then will it reveal what it carries." Mara squeezed Lena's hand gently, reinforcing her calm, letting the child draw courage from the quiet strength around her. The young woman mirrored the gesture, pressing her palm firmly against the barn, letting her awareness thread into the shadow's rhythm, steadying it, guiding it. The shadow moved slightly forward, a deliberate, cautious step, pressing against the threshold without fully crossing. Its presence was immense, intelligent, and patient. The young woman felt the pull stronger now, threading through her awareness, testing the calm in her heart. Mara whispered one final instruction: "Stand steady. Let it feel our presence. Let it see our calm. The next step is coming. Be ready." The young woman inhaled deeply, her chest rising with determination, her heartbeat steady, her awareness fully attuned to the shadow. This moment was not about force, not about fear. It was about presence, patience, and the quiet strength of hearts meeting something ancient and aware. And as the shadow hovered, testing, waiting, she understood. Endurance, calm, and steady hearts would guide what was coming next. The shadow lingered at the threshold, its shape curling and stretching like smoke caught in a gentle wind. Its presence pressed against the young woman's senses, subtle yet insistent, threading through the floor, the walls, the air around them. Every pulse of its awareness resonated with the ground beneath their feet, vibrating through her bones and into her chest. Mara remained still, a pillar of calm, her eyes unwavering, while Lena pressed closer, small and trembling yet steadied by her mentor's quiet strength. The old man's soft chant wove through the silence, a gentle rhythm matching the shadow's pulse. "It tests more than courage," he whispered. "It measures patience, understanding, and the weight of our hearts. We do not push, we endure." The young woman felt warmth spread through her chest as she pressed her hand to the barn, feeling the vibration travel into her entire body. With each pulse, she understood more clearly that this force was not hostile. It demanded respect, patience, and steady hearts. A low, deliberate thrum rolled through the barn, shaking the wooden beams slightly. The shadow responded instantly, expanding outward with a fluid, purposeful motion. The young woman inhaled deeply, aligning her breath with the rhythm of the vibration. She realized that fear had no place here. Only presence, only calm, only focus could guide them through the encounter. Mara's soft voice reassured her. Do not flinch. Let it sense your steadiness. Let it see your heart. The shadow moved a fraction closer, its edges curling and stretching as if testing the limits of the threshold. The young woman could feel the weight of its presence pressing lightly against her awareness, demanding patience. Lena leaned into Mara, small hands gripping the older woman's arm. The young woman mirrored their posture, pressing firmly against the barn's wood, allowing her calm to thread into the rhythm of the shadow, creating a subtle connection. The old man's whisper followed. It measures understanding as much as courage. Every fear, every hesitation, every thought, it senses all. Stand steady, be present. Another pulse rolled through the barn, vibrating through the floor, through her legs, threading into her chest. The young woman inhaled and exhaled slowly, letting the rhythm of the shadow settle in her body, anchoring her awareness, sharpening her focus. The barn groaned, wood creaking softly, as though alive, responding to the movement of the shadow. Outside, the forest remained still, snowflakes drifting quietly in the pale light. Myra's voice was calm, measured. It does not seek to harm, only to test, only to see if we are steady, patient, aware. Let it feel our presence. The shadow pulsed again, deliberate, intelligent, brushing the threshold without crossing fully. The young woman felt the pull stronger now, threading into her chest, into her spine, urging her to remain calm. The old man's chant continued, soft and steady, weaving a rhythm alongside the shadow's pulse, a subtle guide through the tension. Myra squeezed Lena's hand gently. It will test you, she whispered. It will measure every thought, every hesitation. But we do not rush. We remain. We endure. The young woman pressed her palm firmly against the barn's wood, feeling her presence blend with the rhythm of the shadow. Her heartbeat slowed, aligning with the subtle pulse of the vast, intelligent form before them. The shadow expanded slightly, edges curling outward, testing their composure, feeling for cracks in their calm. The young woman felt warmth spread through her chest again, a tether linking her to Mara, Lena, the old man, and the barn itself. She understood fully that this was not a test of strength, nor of speed, nor of fear. It was a test of stillness, presence, and endurance. A long, slow thrum echoed, vibrating through the barn and the frozen earth beneath them. The shadow pulsed in response, a silent question of readiness. Myra's whisper was calm but firm. Stand steady, let it feel our hearts. Let it sense our calm. The next step is coming, be ready. The young woman inhaled slowly, filling her chest with determination. Her heartbeat matched the pulse of the shadow, and she understood the truth of this moment. Strength lay not in force, but in calm, in endurance, and in hearts willing to meet the unknown without fear. The shadow moved again, deliberate and measured, pressing against the threshold, aware and intelligent, sensing their readiness. And in that movement, the young woman felt the quiet power of presence, patience, and unwavering calm, the very forces that would guide them through the next phase of this encounter. The shadow paused at the edge of the barn, its vast, curling form moving with an intelligence that seemed almost human. The young woman felt its presence press against her chest, her shoulders, her spine, a subtle weight that demanded attention and patience. Every pulse of its awareness resonated through the barn, vibrating through the wooden floor and into her very bones. Mara remained calm and still, a steady anchor, while Lena clung to her side, small but steadied by her mentor's quiet presence. The old man's chant, soft and rhythmic, blended with the vibrations of the shadow. "It tests more than courage," he murmured. "It measures patience, understanding, the quiet strength of hearts. We do not push, we endure." The young woman pressed her palm against the barn's wall, feeling the tremor of the shadow travel into her body, teaching her a stillness she had not known she possessed. She understood deeply that fear was irrelevant here. Only patience, focus, and presence mattered. A low rumble echoed through the barn, deep and deliberate, shaking the wooden beams. The shadow responded immediately, pulsing and stretching outward in slow, intelligent movements. The young woman inhaled deeply, letting her breath align with the rhythm of the shadow. Every pulse, every subtle vibration reinforced the lesson she had been learning. Courage was measured in presence, not in force. Myra whispered softly, "Do not flinch. Let it sense your steadiness. Let it feel your heart." The shadow edged slightly forward, testing the boundary of the threshold. The young woman felt the pull stronger now, threading through her awareness like a quiet current. Lena pressed closer to Mara, forehead resting against her shoulder, drawing courage from the older woman's calm. The young woman mirrored them, pressing firmly against the barn, letting her presence merge with the rhythm of the shadow, becoming part of the silent conversation. The old man's whisper followed, deliberate and patient. "It measures understanding as much as courage. Every thought, every hesitation, every breath it knows. Stand steady, be present." Another pulse resonated through the barn, threading through her legs and chest. She inhaled, exhaled, and let the rhythm settle in her body, anchoring her focus and awareness. The barn creaked softly, alive with the subtle shifts of the shadow. Outside, the snow lay quietly, the pale morning light casting soft reflections on the frost. The forest waited in silence, patient, as if it, too, observed the delicate moment when human hearts met an ancient, intelligent presence. Myra's voice cut through the quiet. "It does not act hastily. It only measures. Let it feel our calm. Let it see that we are ready." The shadow pulsed again, slow and deliberate, pressing slightly against their senses without moving fully forward. The young woman felt the pull thread deeper, testing the calm she had cultivated. The old man's chant continued, subtle and rhythmic, guiding them through the tension, blending their presence with the shadow's movement. Myra's hand squeezed Lena's gently. "It will test you," she whispered. "Every hesitation, every thought, every tremor, it senses all. But we do not rush. We remain. We endure." The young woman pressed her palm firmly against the barn, feeling the vibration thread through her chest, aligning her heartbeat with the subtle rhythm of the shadow. The shadow stretched outward again, deliberate and intelligent, testing for cracks in their composure. A warm awareness spread through the young woman's chest, tethering her to Mara, Lena, the old man, and the barn itself. She realized fully that this was a test of endurance and presence, not force. Patience and steady hearts were the true measure of readiness. A long, low thrum echoed through the barn and the frozen earth beyond. The shadow responded with a subtle shift, a question posed in motion. Myra's voice was calm, firm, and soft. "Stand steady. Let it feel our hearts. Let it see our calm. The next step comes, be ready." The young woman inhaled slowly, her chest rising with determination. Her heartbeat matched the pulse of the shadow. She understood the truth of this moment. Strength lay not in resistance or action, but in presence, calm, and enduring focus. And as the shadow hovered, deliberate and patient, she knew that what came next would require nothing more than the quiet courage of hearts meeting the unknown without fear. The shadow remained at the threshold, its form curling and stretching in slow, deliberate motions. Each pulse of its presence vibrated through the barn, threading into the wooden beams, the frozen floor, and into the young woman's chest. She felt every thrum in her bones, in her arms, in the soles of her feet, as if the barn itself was alive, breathing with the shadow. Mara's calm stance beside her radiated reassurance, and Lena pressed her small hands into Mara's side, finding courage in her mentor's stillness. The old man's chant continued, soft and rhythmic, threading through the shadow's movement. "It measures more than courage," he murmured. "It measures patience, presence, and the steady strength of hearts. We do not push, we endure." The young woman pressed her palm firmly against the barn's weathered wall, feeling the vibration travel into her entire body. She understood clearly now that fear had no role here. Only focus, patience, and calm would guide them through the encounter. A low, rolling thrum shook the barn subtly, vibrating through the wooden planks. The shadow responded instantly, moving slightly forward with careful, intelligent motion. The young woman inhaled deeply, aligning her breath with the rhythm of the shadow. She felt her heartbeat slow, matching the pulse beneath her, and realized that courage was not in action or force, but in remaining present, patient, and steady. Myra whispered gently, "Do not flinch. Let it sense your calm. Let it feel your heart." The shadow tested the boundary, curling outward and pressing lightly against the threshold without crossing fully. The young woman felt the pull of its presence, threading into her awareness like a quiet current. Lena leaned closer to Myra, forehead resting against her chest, drawing courage from the older woman's calm. The young woman mirrored their posture, pressing firmly against the barn, letting her steady presence blend into the rhythm of the shadow, forming a silent, unspoken connection. The old man's whisper followed, patient and deliberate. It measures understanding as much as courage. Every hesitation, every thought, every breath, it senses all. Stand steady. Be present. Another pulse rolled through the barn, vibrating up through her legs and chest. She inhaled slowly, exhaled fully, letting the rhythm of the shadow thread into her awareness, anchoring her focus and calm. The barn creaked in quiet response to the shadow's subtle shifts. Outside, the forest remained still, snowflakes drifting softly, catching the pale morning light. Myra's voice was calm and firm. "It does not act in haste. It tests. It measures. Let it feel our calm. Let it see that we are ready." The shadow pulsed once more, deliberate and slow, pressing lightly against their senses. The young woman felt the pull deepen, threading into her chest and spine. The old man's chant continued, weaving their presence into the rhythm of the shadow, guiding them through the tension without words. Myra squeezed Lena's hand gently. "It will test you," she whispered. "Every tremor, every hesitation, it senses all, but we do not move quickly. We endure, we remain, we guide with patience." The young woman pressed her hand firmly against the barn's wood, letting the vibration spread through her body, syncing her heartbeat with the subtle rhythm of the shadow. The shadow stretched slightly, testing the calm and patience of their hearts. A warmth spread through the young woman's chest, tethering her to Mara, Lena, the old man, and the barn itself. She understood fully now. This was a test of endurance and presence, not of strength or fear. Steady hearts and patient minds were the measure of readiness. A long, low thrum vibrated through the barn and the frozen earth outside. The shadow responded with a subtle shift, like a silent question posed in movement. Myra's voice was calm, firm, and soft. "Stand steady. Let it feel your hearts. Let it sense your calm. The next step is coming. Be ready." The young woman inhaled deeply, filling her chest with resolve. Her heartbeat matched the shadow's pulse. She knew that the strength required was not force nor resistance, but the quiet courage of presence. As the shadow hovered, deliberate and patient, she realized that the true test lay in calm, patient hearts ready to meet the unknown without fear. The shadow lingered at the threshold, curling and shifting with a deliberate, almost patient intelligence. Its presence pressed lightly yet insistently against the young woman's awareness, threading through her chest, her arms, and down into her legs. Every pulse seemed alive, resonating with the barn itself, vibrating through the wooden floorboards, through the walls, into her very bones. Mara remained steady beside her, a pillar of calm, while Lena pressed closer, small hands gripping Mara's side, drawing courage from the quiet strength surrounding her. The old man's chant flowed gently, threading through the shadow's subtle movements. "It measures more than courage," he whispered. "It measures patience, presence, and the quiet strength of hearts. We do not act hastily. We endure." The young woman pressed her palm against the barn wall, feeling the vibration travel into her chest and spine. With every pulse, she felt the calm deepen within her, the realization growing that fear was irrelevant here. Only focus, patience, and unwavering presence mattered. A low thrum rolled through the barn, vibrating subtly through the wooden beams above and the floor beneath. The shadow responded immediately, curling outward with careful, deliberate motion. The young woman inhaled deeply, letting her breath match the rhythm of the pulse. She felt her heartbeat slow, aligning with the vibration, and understood that courage was not measured by action or strength, but by patience and stillness. Mara whispered softly, "Do not flinch. Let it feel your calm. Let it see your heart." The shadow tested the threshold again, stretching and pressing slightly forward without stepping fully into the barn. The young woman felt its pull, threading gently through her awareness, urging patience and stillness. Lena leaned against Myra, drawing quiet courage from her mentor's unwavering presence. The young woman mirrored them, pressing firmly against the wooden wall, letting her calm presence weave into the rhythm of the shadow, forming an invisible connection. The old man's whisper was deliberate, full of quiet authority. It tests understanding as much as courage. Every thought, every hesitation, every movement, it senses all. stand steady, be present. Another pulse moved through the barn, traveling into the young woman's legs, chest, and spine. She inhaled and exhaled slowly, letting the rhythm of the shadow thread through her entire being, steadying her focus, anchoring her calm. The barn creaked faintly as though alive, responding to the shadow's subtle movements. Outside, the forest remained hushed, snowflakes drifting softly in the pale light. Mara's voice remained calm and measured. It does not act in haste. It tests, it measures. Let it feel our calm. Let it see that we are ready. The shadow pulsed once more, slow and deliberate, pressing gently against their senses without moving fully into the barn. The young woman felt the pull intensify, threading deep into her chest and spine. The old man's chant continued, rhythmic and soft, weaving their presence into the shadow's movement, guiding them through tension without haste. Myra's hand squeezed Lena's gently. "It will test you," she whispered. "Every tremor, every hesitation, every thought, it senses all. But we do not rush. We endure. We remain. Our patience is our strength." The young woman pressed her hand firmly against the barn, feeling the pulse thread through her body, her heartbeat syncing with the subtle rhythm of the shadow. The shadow stretched and curled, testing the calm and endurance of their hearts. A gentle warmth spread through the young woman's chest, connecting her to Mara, Lena, the old man, and the barn itself. She understood fully now that this was a test of presence, patience, and endurance, not of force or fear. Steady hearts were the true measure of readiness. A long, slow vibration rolled through the barn and into the frozen ground beyond. The shadow responded with a deliberate, almost questioning movement, measuring, sensing. Myra's voice remained soft, firm, and calm. "Stand steady. Let it feel our hearts. Let it sense our calm. The next step is coming. Be ready." The young woman inhaled slowly, filling her chest with determination. Her heartbeat aligned with the shadow's pulse. She realized that the true strength lay not in resisting, not in acting, but in patient presence. As the shadow hovered, deliberate and intelligent, she understood that courage was measured in calm hearts, steady minds, and patience willing to meet the unknown without fear. The shadow lingered, curling and stretching with deliberate, intelligent motion. Its presence pressed gently yet insistently against the young woman's awareness, threading through her chest, her arms, and down into her legs. Each pulse felt alive, resonating through the barn and into her very bones. Myra remained calm beside her, a quiet anchor of stability, while Lena pressed close, small hands gripping Myra's side, drawing courage from her mentor's steady presence. The old man's chant continued, soft and rhythmic, weaving through the barn alongside the shadow's subtle movements. "It measures more than courage," he whispered. "It measures patience, presence, and the quiet strength of hearts. We do not act hastily. We endure." The young woman pressed her palm against the barn wall, feeling the vibration thread into her body, deep into her chest and spine. She realized fully that fear had no role here. Only calm, patience, and unwavering presence would guide them through. A low, slow thrum traveled through the floorboards, vibrating up through her legs and into her chest. The shadow responded immediately, stretching outward with measured, careful motion. The young woman inhaled deeply, matching her breath to the rhythm of the pulse. Her heartbeat slowed, aligning with the subtle vibrations, teaching her that true courage was found in stillness and patience, not in action. Mara's gentle voice reassured her. Do not flinch. Let it sense your calm. Let it feel your heart. The shadow tested the threshold again, curling and pressing forward, but not crossing fully. The young woman felt the pull thread through her awareness, urging patience and steady focus. Lena leaned closer to Mara, forehead resting against her shoulder, drawing quiet courage from her mentor's calm. The young woman mirrored them, pressing firmly against the barn wall, letting her presence blend with the shadow's rhythm, forming an invisible, steady connection. The old man's whisper was deliberate, full of quiet authority. It measures understanding as much as courage. Every thought, every hesitation, every movement, it senses all. Stand steady, be present. Another pulse traveled through the barn, vibrating into her chest and spine. She inhaled and exhaled slowly, letting the rhythm thread through her entire body, anchoring her awareness and focus. The barn creaked softly as though alive, responding to the subtle movements of the shadow. Outside, the snow remained hushed, drifting silently in the pale morning light. Mara's calm voice continued. It does not act hastily. It tests, it measures. Let it feel our calm. Let it see that we are ready. The shadow pulsed again, deliberate and intelligent, pressing gently against their senses. The young woman felt the pull deepen, threading into her chest, urging patience and presence. The old man's chant continued, a quiet, rhythmic guide through the tension, aligning their hearts with the rhythm of the shadow. Myra squeezed Lena's hand gently. It will test you, she whispered. Every thought, every tremor, every hesitation, it senses all. But we do not rush. We endure. We remain. Our calm is our strength. The young woman pressed her hand firmly against the barn, feeling the pulse thread through her body, syncing her heartbeat with the slow, deliberate rhythm of the shadow. The shadow stretched and curled, testing their patience and endurance. A warm awareness spread through the young woman's chest, connecting her to Mara, Lena, the old man, and the barn itself. She understood fully now that this was a test of presence, not force, patience, not speed, endurance, not strength. Steady hearts and calm minds were the true measure of readiness. A long, low vibration rolled through the barn and into the frozen ground outside. The shadow responded with a deliberate, intelligent motion, a silent question posed in movement. Myra's voice remained soft, firm, and calm. Stand steady. Let it feel our hearts. Let it sense our calm. The next step is coming. Be ready. The young woman inhaled slowly, filling her chest with resolve. Her heartbeat aligned perfectly with the pulse of the shadow. She understood that strength lay not in resisting or acting, but in patient presence and calm endurance. As the shadow hovered, deliberate and aware, she realized that courage was measured in calm hearts, steady minds, and patient endurance willing to meet the unknown without fear. The shadow lingered at the threshold, curling and stretching with careful, deliberate movements. Its presence pressed lightly but insistently against the young woman's awareness, threading through her chest, her arms, and down into her legs. Each pulse seemed alive, resonating with the barn, vibrating through the floorboards, the beams, and into her very bones. Mara remained still beside her, a quiet anchor, while Lena pressed close, small hands gripping her mentor's side, drawing courage from the steady calm that surrounded them. The old man's chant continued, soft and rhythmic, weaving through the shadow's subtle motion. "It measures more than courage," he whispered. "It measures patience, understanding, and the quiet strength of hearts. We do not push. We endure." The young woman pressed her palm firmly against the barn wall, feeling the vibrations thread deep into her chest and spine. Fear seemed irrelevant here. Only focus, patience, and unwavering presence mattered. A low, rolling thrum moved through the barn, vibrating through her legs, her chest, and into her spine. The shadow responded instantly, curling outward with measured, intelligent motion. The young woman inhaled deeply, letting her breath match the rhythm of the pulse. She felt her heartbeat slow, aligning with the subtle vibrations, and realized that courage was not in action, but in stillness and presence. Myra's gentle voice reassured her. "Do not flinch. Let it sense your calm. Let it feel your heart." The shadow tested the threshold again, curling forward and pressing lightly, but not crossing fully. The young woman felt its pull thread into her awareness, urging patience and steady focus. Lena leaned into Myra, forehead resting against her shoulder, drawing courage from her mentor's calm presence. The young woman mirrored them, pressing firmly against the barn wall, letting her stillness blend with the rhythm of the shadow, forming an invisible connection. The old man's whisper followed, deliberate and full of quiet authority. It tests understanding as much as courage. Every thought, every hesitation, every movement, it senses all. Stand steady. Be present. Another pulse traveled through the barn, vibrating into her chest and spine. She inhaled and exhaled slowly, letting the rhythm thread through her entire being, anchoring her calm and awareness. The barn creaked softly in response to the shadow's subtle shifts. Outside, the forest remained hushed, snow drifting silently in the pale light. Myra's calm voice continued. "It does not act hastily. It tests, it measures. Let it feel our calm. Let it see that we are ready." The shadow pulsed again, deliberate and intelligent, pressing gently against their senses without moving fully forward. The young woman felt the pull intensify, threading deep into her chest and spine, testing the calm she had cultivated. The old man's chant continued, weaving their presence into the rhythm of the shadow, guiding them patiently through the tension. Myra squeezed Lena's hand gently. "It will test you," she whispered. "Every thought, every tremor, every hesitation, it senses all. But we do not rush. We endure. We remain. Our patience is our strength." The young woman pressed her hand firmly against the barn wall, feeling the pulse thread through her body, syncing her heartbeat with the slow rhythm of the shadow. The shadow expanded and curled, testing their endurance and patience. A warmth spread through the young woman's chest, connecting her to Myra, Lena, the old man, and the barn itself. She understood fully that this was not a test of force, nor speed, nor fear. Presence, patience, and steady hearts were the true measure of readiness. A long, low vibration rolled through the barn and into the frozen ground outside. The shadow responded with a deliberate motion, as if asking a silent question in movement. Myra's voice remained soft, firm, and calm. "Stand steady. Let it feel our hearts. Let it sense our calm. The next step is coming. Be ready." The young woman inhaled slowly, filling her chest with resolve. her heartbeat aligned with the pulse of the shadow. She understood that strength lay not in resisting or acting, but in calm, patient presence. As the shadow hovered, deliberate and aware, she realized that courage was measured in steady minds, patient hearts, and endurance willing to meet the unknown without fear. The shadow lingered at the edge of the barn, curling and stretching slowly, deliberately. Its presence pressed gently against the young woman's awareness, threading through her chest, her arms, and deep into her legs. Each pulse felt alive, resonating with the barn itself, vibrating through the wooden floorboards, the beams overhead, and into her very bones. Mara remained calm beside her, a quiet anchor of stability, while Lena clung close, small hands gripping Mara's side, drawing courage from her steady presence. The old man's chant continued softly, rhythmic and patient, weaving through the shadow's subtle movements. "It measures more than courage," he whispered. "It measures presence, patience, and the quiet strength of hearts. We do not push, we endure." The young woman pressed her palm against the barn wall, feeling the vibration thread into her chest and spine. She realized clearly that fear had no place here. Only focus, calm, and steady presence would guide them through this encounter. A low, rolling thrum traveled through the barn, vibrating up through her legs and chest. The shadow responded instantly, curling outward with deliberate, intelligent motion. The young woman inhaled deeply, letting her breath align with the pulse. She felt her heartbeat slow, syncing with the subtle vibrations. Courage, she understood, was not in action or force, but in stillness, focus, and patience. Mara's soft voice reassured her. "Do not flinch. Let it sense your calm. Let it feel your heart." The shadow tested the threshold again, pressing lightly forward but not crossing fully. The young woman felt its pull thread into her awareness, urging her to remain patient and steady. Lena leaned closer to Mara, forehead resting on her shoulder, drawing quiet strength from her mentor's calm. The young woman mirrored them, pressing firmly against the barn wall, letting her presence merge with the shadow's rhythm, forming an invisible bond of stillness and calm. The old man whispered, calm and deliberate, "It measures understanding as much as courage. Every thought, every hesitation, every tremor, it senses all. Stand steady. Be present." Another pulse traveled through the barn, vibrating into her chest, spine, and limbs. She inhaled and exhaled slowly, letting the rhythm thread through her entire body, anchoring her calm and focus. The barn creaked faintly in response to the shadow's subtle movements. Outside, the forest remained silent, snow drifting softly in the pale light. Mara's voice remained calm and measured. It does not act hastily. It tests. It measures. Let it feel our calm. Let it see that we are ready. The shadow pulsed once more, deliberate and intelligent, pressing gently against their senses. The young woman felt the pull deepen, threading into her chest and spine, testing the calm she had cultivated. The old man's chant continued, weaving their presence into the rhythm of the shadow, guiding them through tension without haste. Mara's hand squeezed Lena's gently. "It will test you," she whispered. "Every thought, every tremor, every hesitation, it senses all. But we do not rush. We endure. We remain. Patience is our strength." The young woman pressed her hand firmly against the barn, feeling the pulse thread through her body, syncing her heartbeat with the slow rhythm of the shadow. The shadow expanded, curling and pressing outward, testing their endurance and patience. A warmth spread through the young woman's chest, connecting her to Mara, Lena, the old man, and the barn itself. She realized fully that this was not a test of force or speed. Presence, patience, and steady hearts were the true measure of readiness. A long, low vibration rolled through the barn and into the frozen ground beyond. The shadow responded with a deliberate, intelligent motion, as if posing a silent question in movement. Myra's voice remained calm, soft, and firm. "Stand steady. Let it feel our hearts. Let it sense our calm. The next step is coming. Be ready." The young woman inhaled slowly, filling her chest with resolve. Her heartbeat aligned perfectly with the pulse of the shadow. She understood that strength lay not in resisting or acting, but in patient presence. As the shadow hovered, deliberate and aware, she realized that courage was measured in calm hearts, steady minds, and patient endurance willing to meet the unknown without fear. The shadow moved with quiet deliberation, curling and stretching slowly, testing the boundaries of the barn and the calm of those within. Its presence pressed lightly but insistently against the young woman's awareness, threading through her chest, her arms, and down into her legs. Each pulse felt alive, resonating with the barn, vibrating through the wooden floorboards, the beams above, and into her very bones. Mara remained beside her, calm and steady, while Lena pressed close, drawing courage from her mentor's unwavering stillness. The old man's chant continued, soft, rhythmic, and steady, threading through the shadow's subtle motions. "It measures more than courage," he whispered. "It measures patience, understanding, and the quiet strength of hearts. We do not rush, we endure." The young woman pressed her palm firmly against the barn wall, feeling the vibration thread into her chest and spine. Fear had no role here. Only focus, calm, and steady presence would guide them through this moment. A low, rolling thrum traveled through the barn, vibrating through her legs and chest. The shadow responded immediately, stretching outward with deliberate, intelligent motion. The young woman inhaled deeply, matching her breath to the rhythm of the pulse. Her heartbeat slowed, aligning with the vibrations. Courage was not in force or action, but in stillness, focus, and patient endurance. Myra's soft, steady voice reminded her, "Do not flinch. Let it sense your calm. Let it feel your heart." The shadow tested the threshold again, curling forward and pressing lightly, but never crossing fully. The young woman felt the pull thread into her awareness, urging patience, focus, and presence. Lena leaned against Myra, forehead resting on her shoulder, drawing courage from her mentor's calm. The young woman mirrored them, pressing firmly against the barn wall, letting her presence weave seamlessly into the rhythm of the shadow. The old man whispered, deliberate and full of quiet authority. "It measures understanding as much as courage. Every thought, every hesitation, every tremor, it senses all. Stand steady, be present." Another pulse traveled through the barn, vibrating into her chest, spine, and limbs. She inhaled and exhaled slowly, letting the rhythm thread through her entire body, anchoring her calm and focus. The barn creaked faintly as though alive, responding to the subtle motions of the shadow. Outside, the forest remained hushed, snow drifting silently in the pale morning light. Myra's calm voice continued. "It does not act hastily. It tests. It measures. Let it feel our calm. Let it see that we are ready." The shadow pulsed again, deliberate and intelligent, pressing gently against their senses without moving fully forward. The young woman felt the pull deepen, threading into her chest and spine, testing the calm she had cultivated. The old man's chant continued, weaving their presence into the rhythm of the shadow, guiding them through tension without haste. Mara's hand squeezed Lena's gently. "It will test you," she whispered. Every thought, every tremor, every hesitation, it senses all. But we do not rush. We endure, we remain. Patience is our strength. The young woman pressed her hand firmly against the barn wall, feeling the pulse thread through her body, syncing her heartbeat with the slow, deliberate rhythm of the shadow. The shadow expanded slightly, curling and pressing outward, testing their endurance and patience. A warmth spread through the young woman's chest, connecting her to Mara, Lena, the old man, and the barn itself. And she understood now fully that this was not a test of force or speed. Presence, patience, and steady hearts were the true measure of readiness. A long, low vibration rolled through the barn and into the frozen earth outside. The shadow responded with a deliberate, measured motion, as if posing a silent question. Mara's voice remained calm, soft, and firm. "Stand steady. Let it feel our hearts. Let it sense our calm. The next step is coming. Be ready." The young woman inhaled slowly, filling her chest with resolve. Her heartbeat aligned with the pulse of the shadow. She understood clearly that strength lay not in resisting or acting, but in patient presence. As the shadow hovered, deliberate and aware, she realized that courage was measured in calm hearts, steady minds, and patient endurance willing to meet the unknown without fear. The shadow hovered quietly, curling and stretching with deliberate, patient movements. It pressed gently against the young woman's awareness, threading through her chest, her arms, and down into her legs. Every pulse felt alive, resonating through the barn, vibrating through the floorboards, the beams, and into her very bones. Mara remained calm beside her, a pillar of steady presence, while Lena clung close, drawing courage from her mentor's unwavering calm. The old man's chant continued softly, rhythmic and patient, weaving through the shadow's subtle movements. "It measures more than courage," he whispered. "It measures patience, understanding, and the quiet strength of hearts. We do not rush, we endure." The young woman pressed her palm against the barn wall, feeling the vibration thread deep into her chest and spine. Fear had no place here. Only focus, calm, and steady presence could guide them. A low, rolling pulse traveled through the barn, vibrating up through her legs and chest. The shadow responded immediately, stretching outward with deliberate, intelligent motion. The young woman inhaled deeply, aligning her breath with the rhythm of the pulse. Her heartbeat slowed, matching the vibrations. Courage was not in force or action, but in stillness, focus, and patient endurance. Mara's soft voice reminded her, "Do not flinch. Let it sense your calm. Let it feel your heart." The shadow tested the threshold again, curling forward and pressing lightly but never crossing fully. The young woman felt its pull thread into her awareness, urging patience, focus, and presence. Lena leaned against Mara, forehead resting on her shoulder, drawing courage from her mentor's calm. The young woman mirrored them, pressing firmly against the barn wall, letting her presence merge seamlessly with the rhythm of the shadow. The old man whispered, deliberate and steady, "It measures understanding as much as courage. Every thought, every hesitation, every tremor, it senses all. Stand steady. Be present. Another pulse traveled through the barn, vibrating into her chest, spine, and limbs. She inhaled and exhaled slowly, letting the rhythm thread through her body, anchoring calm and focus. The barn creaked faintly as though alive, responding to the subtle motions of the shadow. Outside, the forest remained hushed, snow drifting silently in the pale morning light. Myra's calm voice continued. It does not act hastily. It tests. It measures. Let it feel our calm. Let it see that we are ready. The shadow pulsed once more, deliberate and intelligent, pressing gently against their senses. The young woman felt the pull deepen, threading into her chest and spine, testing the calm she had cultivated. The old man's chant continued, weaving their presence into the rhythm of the shadow, guiding them through tension without haste. Myra's hand squeezed Lena's gently. "It will test you," she whispered. "Every thought, every tremor, every hesitation, it senses all. But we do not rush. We endure. We remain. Patience is our strength." The young woman pressed her hand firmly against the barn wall, feeling the pulse thread through her body, syncing her heartbeat with the slow rhythm of the shadow. Slowly, subtly, the shadow began to recede. Its movements became lighter, less deliberate, as if it were acknowledging the strength of their presence. A warmth spread through the young woman's chest, connecting her to Myra, Lena, the old man, and the barn itself. She understood fully that this had been a test of presence, patience, and endurance, not force or speed. Steady hearts and calm minds had prevailed. The pulse of the shadow softened, merging with the gentle rhythm of the barn and the forest outside. The young woman inhaled slowly, filling her chest with relief and quiet pride. Her heartbeat aligned with the softened vibration, steady and calm. Myra whispered softly, "You see now, the strength was within you all along. Presence, patience, calm hearts, that is true courage." The barn grew still, the forest silent. Outside, snow fell gently, blanketing the world in quiet light. The young woman felt a deep, unwavering peace settle into her chest, flowing through her spine, arms, and legs. She understood that the shadow had tested them not to fright, but to guide them to their own strength. It had taught them patience, focus, and the quiet power of presence. Lena pressed close, small hands warm on her shoulder. Myra rested a steady hand on her back. The old man's chant faded into silence. All around them, calm reigned. The young woman breathed slowly, fully aware of the peace that had been earned through patience and endurance. Courage had not been measured in force, nor in action, nor in speed. It had been measured in steady hearts, calm minds, and the willingness to endure, presence intact in the face of the unknown. The shadow finally dissolved, leaving only stillness. The young woman felt the warmth of the barn, the gentle presence of Myra and Lena, and the quiet strength that had always been inside her. The pulse of the barn, the rhythm of her heartbeat, and the calm of the forest outside merged into a single, steady presence. She understood now fully, the test was over. The calm had won. Presence had prevailed. She was ready. The barn remained silent, the snow outside falling softly. The young woman's chest rose and fell, steady and calm. Courage, patience, and presence had carried them through. She closed her eyes, letting the quiet settle deep within her. There was nothing more to prove. Everything was exactly as it should be. Calm, steady, present, strong, free.